Marcus Reed had been Eleanor Vale's private driver for 11 months when she fired him in front of 3 executives. "You're unreliable," Eleanor said coldly. Marcus stood beside the black sedan, holding the keys. "I've never missed a pickup." "That's not the point." She handed him an envelope. "Your final payment." Marcus looked at it, but didn't take it. "May I ask what I did?" Eleanor crossed her arms. "My daughter doesn't need a driver who disappears for 10 minutes every afternoon." Marcus glanced toward the mansion. "Your daughter needs someone who notices when she's in danger." Eleanor's expression hardened. "Exactly. You're becoming paranoid." Marcus said nothing. He had noticed things. A black SUV parked 2 streets away 3 mornings in a row. A man photographing the mansion gates. A security camera that had mysteriously stopped working. A delivery van that appeared at unusual hours. He had reported each detail to security. Nobody had taken him seriously. Eleanor especially disliked his constant warnings. She was a billionaire who had spent years surrounded by people telling her what was happening. She didn't need a driver telling her what might happen. Now she dismissed him. "You're fired," she repeated. Marcus slowly nodded. "Understood." He handed over the keys. He had learned long ago not to argue when emotions were high. He turned toward his old sedan. He had barely taken 3 steps when he heard something. A scream. It came from inside the mansion. Marcus stopped. His body reacted before his mind could process the sound. His shoulders tightened. His eyes scanned the building. The front door was open. One security guard was missing from his position. Another was looking toward the driveway. Marcus immediately knew something was wrong. Eleanor shouted behind him. "Marcus!" He ignored her. He ran toward the house. "Marcus, stop!" He didn't. His military instincts had returned. Not the instincts of a driver. The instincts of a man who had once spent years entering places where everyone else was trying to get out. He reached the front door. A maid stood frozen in the hallway. Her face was white. "Where's Lily?" "The playroom." "How many?" "I don't know." "Did you see anyone?" She shook her head. Marcus heard something crash upstairs. Then a child's frightened cry. He ran. His shoes struck the marble stairs. He reached the hallway. The playroom door was partially open. Marcus slowed. He listened. A man's voice came from inside. "Stay quiet." Then Lily cried. Marcus's jaw tightened. He pushed the door open. A stranger stood beside 6-year-old Lily. The man had one hand around her arm. The other held a knife. Lily's face was covered with tears. She saw Marcus. Her eyes widened. The intruder turned. "Get out." Marcus didn't move. "Let her go." The man tightened his grip. "Back away." Marcus raised his hands. "I'm backing away." He took one step. Then another. The intruder relaxed slightly. That was exactly what Marcus wanted. He had learned long ago that the fastest way to control a dangerous situation wasn't always force. Sometimes it was patience. He watched the man's shoulders, his feet, his breathing, the angle of the knife, the distance to Lily. Then the man glanced toward the hallway. Marcus moved. He stepped forward and grabbed the man's wrist. The knife dropped. The man swung with his other hand. Marcus ducked. The punch missed. Marcus drove the man's arm against the wall and forced him down. The entire struggle lasted seconds. The intruder tried to reach for the knife. Marcus kicked it away. Then he secured the man's wrists with a belt he had grabbed from a nearby chair. "Stay down." The man struggled. Marcus didn't even look at him. He turned toward Lily. She was trembling. Marcus crouched. "Hey." She stared at him. "You're safe." She shook her head. "Mommy, your mother is coming. Don't leave." Marcus looked directly into her eyes. "I won't." He removed his jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders. Lily grabbed his shirt. Marcus held her carefully. Then Eleanor appeared in the doorway. She froze. Her eyes moved from her daughter to the man on the floor, then to Marcus. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Finally, Eleanor whispered, "What happened?" Marcus stood. "Call the police." She couldn't move. "Call the police." Eleanor grabbed her phone. Her hands were shaking. Marcus checked Lily for injuries. A small red mark was visible on her wrist. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Lily shook her head. "You saved me." Marcus looked at her. Then he heard sirens approaching. The police arrived within minutes. The intruder was taken away. Eleanor stayed beside Lily. She couldn't stop touching her daughter's hair. Marcus stood near the window. His hands were trembling slightly. Not from fear. From the adrenaline leaving his body. Eleanor finally looked at him. "You were a Navy SEAL." Marcus nodded. "I was. You never told me. You never asked." She stared at him. You've been driving me for almost a year. Yes. And you never thought I should know? Marcus looked toward Lily. I wasn't hired to be a soldier. He paused. I was hired to drive. Eleanor looked ashamed. I fired you. Marcus nodded. Yes. And seconds later, Marcus looked at Lily. Your daughter needed help. Eleanor couldn't find an answer. The police began questioning Marcus. He explained everything. Then he mentioned the black SUV. The same vehicle was parked near the property 3 mornings this week. The officer looked up. Are you sure? Same plate. Why didn't you report it? I did. Eleanor looked toward her security chief. The chief lowered his eyes. I received the reports. Why weren't they investigated? Eleanor demanded. We thought it was a coincidence. Marcus looked at him. 3 consecutive mornings? The chief said nothing. The police checked the surveillance footage. One camera was missing several hours of footage. Another camera had been manually disabled. That changed everything. The attack wasn't random. Someone had planned it. The police traced the black SUV. It belonged to a private security company. But Eleanor had never hired them. The company had been contracted by someone else. Investigators began digging. Marcus remembered another detail. The same man had appeared near Eleanor's office 2 weeks earlier. He had been pretending to make a delivery. Marcus had noticed that his identification badge didn't match the company's uniform. At the time, Eleanor had dismissed the concern. Now she listened carefully. Who else knew Lily's schedule? Marcus asked. Eleanor thought. Her nanny. Security. My assistant. My family. Marcus looked at her. Anyone else? Eleanor hesitated. My nephew. Marcus's eyes narrowed. Which nephew? Adrian. The police exchanged looks. Adrian Vale had been pressuring Eleanor for months to sell a major portion of the company. He had repeatedly criticized her security expenses. He had also complained about Marcus. Why did Adrian dislike him? One officer asked. Eleanor looked uncomfortable. He said Marcus was unqualified. Marcus smiled bitterly. That's interesting. The officer turned. Why? Because Adrian once asked me about Lily's schedule. Eleanor's face changed. When? 3 weeks ago. What did he ask? Which days she stayed at home? Why didn't you tell me? Marcus looked at her. I thought he was asking because of a family event. Eleanor slowly sat down. For the first time, she understood. Marcus hadn't been paranoid. He had been paying attention. The very thing she had mocked him for doing might have saved her daughter's life. That night, after the police left, Eleanor found Marcus sitting outside the mansion. He was waiting for his old sedan. She walked toward him. Marcus. He stood. Is Lily okay? She's sleeping. Good. Eleanor looked at him. I owe you an apology. Marcus said nothing. I called you unreliable. He nodded. I said you were paranoid. Another nod. I fired you. Yes. And then you saved my daughter's life. Marcus looked away. You don't owe me anything. I do. No. Eleanor shook her head. I was wrong. Marcus finally looked at her. Eleanor took a breath. Will you come back? Marcus was silent. As my driver? If that's what you want. And if it isn't? I'll understand. Marcus looked toward his old car. I'm a single father. I know. I need predictable hours. You'll have them. I need to leave on time when my daughter has school events. You will. Marcus looked at her. You have a daughter. Eleanor smiled. Yes. Then you know. She nodded. Better than I did yesterday. Marcus almost smiled. One condition. What? Your security system gets completely rebuilt. Eleanor laughed softly. Deal. Marcus opened his car door. Before he got inside, Eleanor stopped him. Marcus. He turned. Thank you. Marcus nodded. Take care of Lily. I will. He drove away. Eleanor stood in the driveway watching the taillights disappear. Then she looked toward the mansion. For the first time, she understood that wealth couldn't protect the people she loved by itself. Money could buy cameras, cars, guards, technology, but it couldn't replace awareness. And sometimes the person who noticed danger first wasn't the person with the highest title. It was the man everyone had just called a driver. By morning, Eleanor would discover that the attack on Lily was only the beginning. Because the person behind it wasn't a stranger. It was someone much closer to her family than she could ever have imagined. 3 days after the attempted kidnapping, Eleanor called an emergency board meeting. The atmosphere inside the conference room was unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. Usually, Eleanor's board meetings were controlled and polished. Executives arrived with prepared presentations. Assistants distributed reports. People spoke carefully because everyone knew Eleanor had little patience for wasted time. This meeting was different. Security guards stood outside the door. 2 police detectives were waiting in a private office downstairs. Eleanor sat at the head of the table with a folder in front of her. Marcus stood near the wall. He wasn't there as a driver. He was there because Eleanor had finally understood that his observations mattered. Across the table sat Adrian Vale, Eleanor's nephew. He looked calm, almost too calm. Marcus noticed that immediately. Adrian glanced at him. What is he doing here? Eleanor answered without looking up. He's here because he saved Lily's life. Adrian's expression changed for only a second. Marcus noticed. Then Adrian smiled. Of course. Eleanor opened the folder. The police have traced the people involved in the attack. Nobody spoke. She continued. They also discovered that the attacker had access to information about Lily's schedule. The chief financial officer shifted in his chair. The head of security looked down. Eleanor placed another document on the table. Someone inside this company provided that information. Adrian leaned back. Do they know who? Not yet. Marcus watched him carefully. Adrian looked unusually relaxed. That bothered him. Eleanor continued. Someone accessed my private calendar. She turned toward the IT director. Whose computer? The director swallowed. Mr. Adrian Vale's. The room went silent. Adrian sat upright. That's impossible. The access logs say otherwise. I wasn't the one who accessed it. Then who did? I don't know. Marcus noticed Adrian's right hand moving toward his jacket pocket. He spoke quietly. Don't. Everyone looked at him. Adrian froze. Eleanor frowned. What? Marcus pointed at Adrian. His phone. Adrian's expression changed. Excuse me. Your phone. Adrian stood. You're accusing me now? Marcus didn't move. I'm telling you to put the phone on the table. Adrian laughed. This is ridiculous. Eleanor looked at him. Put it down. Adrian hesitated. Then his phone buzzed. The screen lit up. Marcus could see the message from across the room. The driver knows too much. Adrian immediately grabbed the phone. Marcus moved. Adrian tried to run. Marcus stepped into his path. Move. No. Adrian shoved him. Marcus barely moved. Security rushed through the door. Adrian struggled. Get off me. The officers restrained him. Eleanor stared at her nephew. Adrian. He looked at her. I'm sorry. Her face hardened. Why? Adrian didn't answer. The detectives took him away. The investigation uncovered the truth over the following weeks. Adrian had been working with several people who wanted control of Eleanor's company. They had been pressuring her to sell a major division. When she refused, they planned to force her hand. Lily's kidnapping was supposed to frighten Eleanor into signing documents transferring control of the company. The black SUV had been used to monitor the family's movements. The disabled cameras had been arranged by someone inside the security department. The information about Lily had come from Adrian's access to Eleanor's private calendar. Marcus had been right about every warning. The black SUV, the suspicious delivery driver, the disabled camera, the questions about Lily's schedule, all of it. Eleanor eventually called Marcus into her office. She stood beside the window. I owe you more than an apology. Marcus smiled. You've already apologized. Not enough. You don't have to. I do. She turned toward him. When you warned me, I thought you were overreacting. Marcus nodded. Most people do. Why didn't you quit? He shrugged. I needed the job. Eleanor smiled sadly. And because of that, you stayed. Marcus looked toward the city. I also cared about Lily. Eleanor nodded. She cares about you. Marcus smiled. I care about her too. Eleanor sat down. I want to offer you a position. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Another driving job? No. She slid a document across the desk. Director of Family Security and Risk Awareness. Marcus looked at it. He laughed. That's a long title. It comes with better hours. How much better? Enough. Marcus studied the document. I have one condition. Eleanor smiled. I know. You don't. No. I need to pick up my daughter from school every afternoon. Then you will. I need weekends with her. You'll have them. I don't want to spend every waking hour protecting billionaires. Eleanor laughed. Then don't. Marcus looked at her. You're serious? Yes. She pointed toward the document. You'll build the security program, train the team, and work reasonable hours. Marcus nodded. I'll consider it. Eleanor smiled. That's the first time you've ever made me wait for an answer. Marcus laughed. I've learned from you. He accepted the position. But the biggest change wasn't his salary. It was how people treated him. The same executives who had once ignored him now asked for his opinion. Security officers listened when he spoke. Managers stopped dismissing small details. And Eleanor changed too. She no longer judged people by their uniforms. One afternoon, Eleanor walked through the mansion and found Marcus sitting on the floor with Lily. They were working on a puzzle. Lily looked up. "Marcus." He smiled. "Hey." Eleanor watched them. Her daughter had never trusted many people, but Marcus had become one of them. Lily suddenly pointed at a puzzle piece. Marcus handed it to her. She placed it correctly. Then she smiled. Eleanor sat beside them. "Do you know what she told me yesterday?" Marcus looked at her. "What?" "She said you're her hero." Marcus laughed. "I'm not." Eleanor smiled. "That's exactly what a hero would say." Marcus shook his head. "I was just doing my job." Eleanor looked at him. "No." She glanced at Lily. "You were doing something more." Marcus didn't respond. He knew what she meant. He had spent years in the military protecting people because it was his responsibility. Now he protected people because they mattered to him. There was a difference. Months passed. Lily slowly recovered from the trauma. She stopped waking from nightmares. She returned to school. She started laughing again. And every afternoon, Marcus picked her up. Sometimes she talked about school. Sometimes she complained about homework. Sometimes she fell asleep in the back seat. Marcus didn't mind. He had become more than a driver. He had become part of her world. One evening, Eleanor watched Marcus leave with Lily. She realized something. The man she had fired had never asked for recognition. He hadn't told anyone about his military past. He hadn't bragged about what he could do. He had simply done what needed to be done. That was why she trusted him now. Not because he had once been a Navy SEAL. Because he was a father. A man who understood that protecting someone wasn't about looking powerful. It was about paying attention. Months later, the company held a major celebration. Eleanor stood on stage before hundreds of employees. She thanked the executives.